Carrie, I think you're on mute there.
I still am on mute. I even clicked it. Thank you for that. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and get started. Don is going to be our first speaker. And I believe this is the first month we've had 3 gentlemen on. So it's very male dominated this morning. Don's going to go ahead and give us his report on his natural disaster stress and anxiety report. So Don, we're going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Corey. So yeah, I wanted to start out with letting the group know about how I got involved in farm stress suicide prevention. So growing up, our hired man took his own life, followed by me getting involved in extension and then having 3 agricultural suicides in my community. That set us down this path of searching out funding to prevent suicides in agriculture and allowed us to be accepted for a FARSAN grant through USDA that covers 13 states and 4 territories with 10 different languages. We have great partners in land-grant universities, Farm Aid, as well as the AgriBility program. So within this grant, it's broken out into 4 different components. The baseline analysis that's covered by Michelle Grokey out of Montana State, networking through Esmeralda Mandujano out of UC Cal Davis, outreach by Montana State through Allison Brennan, and direct services through WSU and my office. So within the data itself, we know that agriculture is a very stressful occupation, and that we are seeing a lot of deaths due to suicides in our agricultural community. And we also know that it's even worse for younger people, as suicide is the 3rd causing death for teenage youth, and those that are younger are having more suicidal thoughts, and this gets worse having gone through a local pandemic, or excuse me, a worldwide pandemic. So why are we seeing these large numbers? It's all related around the job itself. Many of you on this call are farmers or have worked on farms or work with farming, and we all know some of those stressors. You know, you're up against things like the weather and yields, and there's all sorts of natural things that are occurring to prevent those higher yields, like pest and disease, animal health, equipment breakdown, injuries. Then you got the financial components, where we've seen it in this last year, costs almost double for most of the inputs, and the commodities themselves not receiving those higher cost increases to make up for some of those costs. So a lot of our farmers are highly leveraged. They've got a lot of pressure on them to perform. And similar to my case, most of them are multi-generational. So you have those topics that are happening within the family. You know, in my family, I was told from a very young age that my ancestors made these great steps to get to where we're at, and you know, to be able to farm in this amazing place, and by goodness, that I better not screw it up. So that puts a lot of pressure on our farmers that are trying to keep up the farming lifestyle, although there's been a lot of changes to that lifestyle over time, and a lot of them choose to take their own lives because of that multi-generational process. So, and then you can add in things like injuries and all sorts of other issues to add to these things, including stigma, which is a big one that WRASAP has been working on. So, within agriculture, for me personally, when I was very young, I was taught to internalize all my problems, to keep them, close to my chest, and that you deal with the task at hand, you get the job done, and feelings can wait. And I think that really puts a lot of agricultural producers at a disadvantage in that they don't want to talk about their problems. They definitely don't want to go see a mental health provider. And so what happens, at least in my family, is we internalize all those things until there is an explosion, and then it all comes out, and then we're trying to pick up the pieces afterwards. So within natural disaster stress, I've highlighted a few that have happened in my community over the past 10 to 20 years. So we have things like flooding. There was huge flooding in Washington State this past year, and that put tremendous stress on our farmers. Things like wildfires that have happened in the Okanagan region, which killed thousands of cows, and cattlemen being very distressed. Things like the Nisqually earthquake that really raised havoc in our state, as well as major mudslides, and then things like drought. And so these are just a few of the natural disasters that have happened in my area. I realize that most of the people on this call are from all over the United States, and you all have very unique natural disasters that are occurring in your region. So the comment that I wanted to make is, number one, you have to deal with the emergency at hand. So that's going to be, your local emergency providers. They're going to step in, they're going to try to do what they can to get these people through the emergency process. And what I wanted to focus on is the aftermath of the disaster and the suicidality once these farmers realize that, they potentially could lose their entire farms. So as we transition to that side of things, I think it's very important for everyone on this call to make sure that they have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number in their phones readily available, so that when you're interacting with these folks that are in this crisis, to be able to get them some help. So I've included both the Suicide Prevention Lifeline as well as the text line. And I usually get some kind of laughter from the group when I'm explaining that there's a text line, and my farmers will say, "Oh, Don, we're not millennials. We don't need the text line." And that's when I get to respond that oftentimes our farmers don't feel comfortable talking to someone on a lifeline, but they sometimes feel more comfortable, and there's less pressure on them if they're able to text that information to someone. So would encourage you to put these in your phone. If you run into somebody that's suicidal, you can reach out to these folks and they can help you through the process. Also wanted to make mention of some of the services through WRASAP. So we have partnered with Farm Aid to increase their call center. And so when we first reached out to them back in 2019, they had a call center located in the Eastern United States. It was functioning at 7 hours per day, 5 days a week. And we really liked what they were doing. You can call them. They have access to, attorneys, CPAs, and other folks that can really help out with a lot of these natural disasters. So with that, we were able to double their capacity. So now we're somewhere in the realm of 15 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I just met with them yesterday, and I'm encouraging them to take this line 24/7. We'll see where that goes, but did want to make that one available to you all. So that number is 1-800 farm aid. And what I like about farm aid is they have operators that have either farmed themselves or have experience with farming. So as you call this line, the people on the other end have I believe a better understanding of agriculture and could probably serve your stakeholders a little bit better on the farming side. That being said, they are not a crisis line. So this is less on the crisis side, more on getting your farmers and farm workers access to places that can assist them after that natural disaster. Then I'd also encourage you to go to our website, which is farmstress.us, or the way I like to think about it is FarmStress Us. And there is a clearinghouse, and that clearinghouse is chock full of information in regards to your state and services that are available to you and your stakeholders. We also have a process through FarmStress for mini grants. So if you're interested in getting involved in farm stress suicide prevention, I would encourage you to go fill out the application and apply for funding through farmstress.us. Unfortunately, this is only available in the Western United States. So there are other FARSAN grants available throughout the rest of the US, and I can connect you up to those PIs that are running those proposals. And they also, some of them have mini grant processes as well. So here within Washington State, we have kind of some unique services that are available in some other states. So you might want to check into these. So in Washington State, we have an ag economics professional named John Driver, who goes out to farms, sits down with farmers, farm workers, and actually goes over their books with them, trying to help these farmers and farm workers take an active look at their businesses, and then he makes suggestions and changes to their businesses over time. Also, he is looking for signs of stress and suicidality, and he is stepping up when he sees those signs and making those calls and getting these people to help. So that's another big one that we're excited to offer within Washington State. Once again, if you'll have to check into your own state offerings to see if something like that is available to you. We also have a new program that we've just launched through this office for vouchers. And so these are coupons for farmers and farm workers to be able to access mental health providers in our state. They get 6 free 1-hour visits with a mental health provider. And our hope and what the research says is that if farmers and farm workers are given a free coupon to go see a mental health provider, they're more apt to do so. And then after the fact, they're more apt to continue to go see a mental health provider. So we're real excited about vouchers and are hopeful that this will also have an impact for some of those farmers that are going through some of these natural disaster crises. So for you, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about signs for you to look for while these folks are in crisis. So if you see changes in routine, a decline in care of their farm and or livestock, changes in mood, if you find them anxious, agitated, or angry, if you see new or increased financial pressures, a loss of interest of hobbies or activities, and a big one that we see is gifting of prized possessions. When you hear a farmer or farm worker say, I want you to have this prized possession that my ancestors gave to me, and I want you to have it because I'm not going to be here very much longer. Those are signs that you need to act, and you need to act swiftly. So I won't go into this. It's a lot of words on a PowerPoint slide, but I gave a talk similar to this at a commodity workshop a few years ago, and I had one of the CEOs of the local commodity group listened to the presentation. The next day he was meeting with a farmer in a neighboring county, and that farmer exhibited all of the 6 signs that I recently mentioned. So this person called me and he said, Don, this person exhibited all 6 signs. What do I do? And I said, well, where are you at? What's happening? He said, well, I just left the farm. What do I do? And I said, turn that truck back around and don't leave that person until you get them help. He did that, and I'm really considering him a hero. That being said, he wants no credit for it, doesn't want to be recognized, doesn't want his name in print. And so I think that's another area of stigma that we have to work through as well. Like, in my opinion, this guy saved another human being's life, and should definitely be recognized for it. So with that, I'll go ahead and close out. I know Corey wants to have us be able to answer some questions. So Corey, I don't know if you want that to happen now or at a later time, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that now. Lily actually posted in the chat. She wanted to know, how do you get those vouchers paid for the farmers?
Right. So for me and my program, it's through private funding. So I've got a foundation in Washington State, and they had a family member that died because of suicide. And so they came to me, they wanted to do something. And so I just laid everything out on the table like I just did for you all. And they said, oh, well, we want some of this donation to go to vouchers. And so that sent me down this road of starting a program for Washington State. I thought it would be easy. I thought I'd just pick up the phone to one of my local doctors and they would start this telehealth program and it would be easy. It has been anything but. All the doctors I talk to, the first thing they say is, well, what insurance are we going to bill? And I'm like, no, you're not going to bill an insurance. You're going to bill Washington State University. I have this funding source. The university will cut you a check. And they say, well, we don't do that. We don't know. That's not part of the way we do business. So if you are going to start a voucher program, just know that going into things that it's not as easy as you might perceive. We're working with the WSU Psych Clinic over in Pullman, Washington, and that makes it easy for me because we can do these internal payments rather than trying to pay an independent doctor to do it. There are some other models. Minnesota actually hired their own PhD to offer this service. So that's another model you might look into.
Yeah, I love the voucher program because it gets that farmer in the door without any financial stress. And then once they start actually going to counseling, I think that it really truly helps them, but getting them in that door with that voucher sincerely helps.
Definitely. And we know that a farmer doesn't want to see their pickup truck in town at the local mental health provider. So by switching to telehealth, it's something they can do in the privacy of their own home or tractor or wherever. So we like that as well.
Okay, Dominic put in the chat, where can they get more information about the voucher program? And Dominic, I don't know if you mean just like the general logistics of it, or if you are talking like more in depth, like how to start one. To be able to share, he says. Right.
So I know Michigan has a really robust voucher program, so that might be one to look at. Ours is just getting up and running. So because our provider doesn't want to take on a whole lot of clients to start, we haven't made it very public. So it's something that we're sharing directly with the farmers one-on-one and in our outreach efforts at workshops, but we haven't put it online. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to share anything I know.
Yeah, we might go ahead and have you put your email in the chat because Lily said she has some funders in mind if you have a budget process for how to approach that. So it sounds like you guys need to connect afterwards and get in depth on how to actually do this program.
Perfect.
Oh, good.
Love to
Josie
chat with
says,
them.
Yeah, Josie says Illinois is in the process of developing a voucher program too. Ooh, I love that. I hope every state gets on board with that. Oh, good. I see Missouri in there, Josie. Okay. Nice. That's where I'm from, is Missouri.
Yeah, and Josie, I know she has a small grants program too for those that are interested.
Awesome. You guys are great putting all those in the chat so everybody can see that. And I believe we're going to have our IT person send the chat out to everyone as well.
Perfect. And
Okay.
yeah, Wisconsin has a good voucher program too. And they were really fabulous about getting us information on how to start ours. So yeah, reach out to Wisconsin. They're one of the leaders there too.
I love when everybody shares. And you hit on something that I really push out a lot, is to have those crisis numbers in your phone so they're easily accessible. When you said that, I was like, right on, Dawn. That's what I love to do. I tell everybody, I'm like, just screenshot them and put them in your phone so you have them available. We have some extra time because our second speaker, actually, this is kind of crazy. He is a therapist and he has a suicide crisis going on right now with a client. So we're going to move him to February. So if you have anything more in depth that you weren't able to get in, feel free to do that. And then if anybody has any other questions, we'll have extra time. I was thinking too, your now I forget what the heck, clearinghouse, I think you called it.
Yes.
Maybe you can put a link in the chat for that too. I was interested in that.
Perfect. So the website is farmstress.us, and you just go into the clearinghouse and punch that in. And in fact, if somebody wants to do an example, we could probably bring that up for them.
Christy says in the chat, is there a program to help farmers that need surgery and don't have funds, like to help people with chores? Anybody can answer that if you don't know, Don.
Yeah, I'm not aware of one.
All right. And Karen put a nice PDF in the chat.
I have some input on that surgery thing
Yeah.
to help do chores. Farm Rescue does a pretty good job of serving the states that they do serve. They don't serve all of them, but they'll send out volunteers to help do chores or whether people need crops put in. They're a great organization.
That's right. I think I have heard that before and forgotten about that.
Gary, do you mind? This is Josie Rudolphi. Do you mind if I chime in here also?
Please.
No, go ahead. Yes.
Absolutely agree. Farm Rescue is in the process of expanding to as many states as possible. So I would definitely consider them. Christy, we also have in the North Central region a small grants program, whereas farmers can apply for small, quick turnaround grants. We're looking at like $3,000, but they can justify the cost in that it will reduce stress or improve mental health. What would you say? The application guidelines are relatively low. So the case just has to be made that this $3,000 would be used to again reduce stress for a producer. And I can put a link in the chat to that small grants program. In Wisconsin, being in the North Central region, this producer would absolutely qualify. The challenge is we can't find the help, right? And that's huge. We recognize that as also being a major source of stress, not just the cost in finding help, not just the cost of help, but finding it. I will drop that chat, and that's open to anybody in the North Central region. So I think Dawn put up a photo of the regions. Sorry, I was a few minutes late, but it's basically like the upper Midwest from the Dakotas over to Michigan and down to basically the line under Missouri.
That would be perfect. If you have that link handy, that would be great. Then people can just click right on that.
So Corey, I've got the FarmStress website up on the clearinghouse. So once again, there's just a lot of services in here to check from. I encourage all of you to go through and use this service. You simply type in what you're interested in, click your state, and hopefully there's information there for you. We do try to cover all of the United States, but of course our focus for this grant is in the West. So use the website, and then if you have any feedback for us, I'd be happy to take that and use it to make the service better.
Yeah, I'm writing down all kinds of things to share on our social media to get this information out there. Like, this group is a wealth of information, and I just share as much as I can.
Right. And we're always looking for new ideas too. I mean, I tell everyone I'm just a farm kid that's trying to do good and trying to prevent suicides in farmers and farm workers, as large of a geographical area as I can. So, if you have ideas for us, feel free to share them. We're always searching for that thing that's going to help prevent suicides in our communities. So I know you all have great ideas too.
Yes, everybody does. Great networking group. All right, so there, if you haven't looked in the chat, go ahead and look in there. There's lots of links and information in there. And then if you don't have anything more for Don, we'll go ahead and move to Marty. Marty is with Lyfts, previously known as Life Essentials. And I have personal experience with Lyfts, as I have gotten their journeyman. I'm a partially disabled cattle farmer here in Missouri, and recently met Marty, I believe it was in Nashville. Actually, I think we met at the NTW conference last year briefly, and then got to speak more in Nashville at a conference. So I'm going to go ahead. Marty does not have a PowerPoint, so you're just going to see his handsome face this morning as he explains what Lyfts is about and how it helps decrease the stress of his clients.
So am I unmuted, Carrie? Because I
Yes.
lost my screen. All right. So,
Yeah,
so
you're
you
good.
can see me, we'll be fine. Well, I come at this from probably a little different angle than some folks. And I'll give you just a little background on myself to give you that sense of where I'm coming from. So I'm a career law enforcement officer. I served 12 and a half years with the city of Lafayette, Indiana, and then moved to a rural community with lakes and small little town, and I've worked 27 years with that department. And so I've been right in the throes of some of this, and I have been one of those rushing to people's aid for years. I myself had an invalid brother, and he was older than me, lived about 14, and I have 2 special needs grandchildren. And so I think I understand some of the pains and struggles that folks go through that way. I also believe I have a good grasp of helping folks take back control after they've had a life-changing event. Lyfts, the company that I work with, Lyfts by Life Essentials. We've kind of taken the Lyft moniker because when you start searching essentials, you come up with oils and candles and a little bit of everything, but it plays a vital role in helping people bridge the gap of what they cannot physically do themselves. They may have come through rehab very well, they may be doing good, but they just can't get up that ladder, or they can't get into that piece of equipment. And so sometimes they need some sort of outside help to help bridge that gap. Our founder is a polio survivor. And I just recently read where his father refused to let him take the easy way out. His father said he was going to have to do chores just like his brothers. And he and his dad found ways, created assistive technology before that was the catchphrase, so that he could do things. One of them was as simple as putting wafers of straw down so he could kneel while he shoveled out the manure. And so assistive technology has been part of his life all along. Mental health is a key to how we deal with those disabilities and difficulties, especially in agriculture. I'm currently working a case where the wife has been a helper on the farm for decades. And due to issues with her legs, she just cannot climb up in her beloved green tractor anymore. And the husband has talked with me, and he shared with me that he's got help on the farm. I don't want to say he doesn't need her. He could find a way to get things done, but he said, I have to get her in the cab of that tractor for her mental well-being. And I applaud him for understanding that part of it. Men seem to identify with their career way more than women do. I think we know that men are waffles and women are spaghetti, and men compartmentalize their lives. They are a fireman. They are a mailman. And when that career goes away, or they fear that career going away, they often struggle. I don't claim to be any kind of a doctor, but I think women, because of their nature, they start reprogramming and trying to figure out ways to still be a mom, ways to still do what they have to do. And men, guys, you see military service fellas come out of military and can't adjust to civilian life because it's not what they're used to. Farmers are no different. A quick Google search, I appreciate Don's comments. I took a full page of notes. Quick Google search, I think, showed farmers at number 9 in the top 10 for suicides. And with me being an officer, I look, police officers are number 3, following medical doctors and dentists. I don't get that. Go figure. You know, a doctor you'd think would not be going down that. I often share a story of one of my earliest trips in this position, and just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on in that mind. He was a mid-40s farmer who was out hiking with his wife one day. I think they were celebrating an anniversary, actually. And the next day he woke up and could only move his eyelashes. And no, he didn't take a fall. It was a pesky infection that developed into Guillain-Barré syndrome. And as I understand it, GBS is where the immune system mistakenly attacks the central nervous system. I was told that he spent 9 months in the facility, and he was now 3 years past release when I show up to let him use a truck pilot lift. I quickly learned after being released from the hospital, his wife pushed him around a farm show, and he'd seen a truck pilot lift before. And he told her, someday I'll have one. And the wife admits at the time she said, no way, it's just not going to happen. She didn't tell him that, but she felt that way. As I began to explain how the remote control worked, he told me, oh, I've been watching the videos. I've been dreaming of this day. And so he took the remote and he transferred from his wheelchair to the seat. He put himself in the cab of the tractor. And I looked at him and he looked a bit different at that moment. And I said to him, what are you thinking? And that's when the tears came. And they just flowed. And when he got himself together in a minute or two, his statement was, I thought I'd never see over that hood again. It still gives me goosebumps to hear him say it. Somebody else in the group said, hey, today's his birthday. And I think we all were snot-nosed and wet-eyed before that. But I looked at him and realized that I'm new in this game when I meet with this young fella. And I said to him, I said, now, I don't know your abilities, but do you have the ability to drive that tractor? And he responded, he went from tears to absolute joy. I told somebody one time, you look like a 12-year-old that grandpa said, you can move the farm truck. And when his brother jumped up in the jump seat, and then his wife, and they took drives around the farm, it put him back to where he never thought he was going to be able to get to. I just received a text from a 35-year-old farmer that we delivered a Lyft to. And here was his words. He says, I was able to cut the last few acres of beans. Thanks so much for a great product, 4 exclamation points. I haven't been in a combine for 15 years and I was able to get in independently. Now, I'm not here to try and sell you on my equipment. I'm just telling you, these are some of the mental throes that these folks are going through. There are several pieces to that recovery puzzle, and I'm not even going to try and cover them all, but there's certainly physical healing, and there's the rehabilitation process, and there's certainly the acceptance of the new normal. Things have changed in an instant. Then, yes, there is that piece of finding assistive technology to bridge that gap that you cannot cross. And then, of course, I'm a firm believer that you're being spiritually grounded is a real key to your future and being hopeful to get through it. The good news is the AgriBility program and Easter Seals, they do a great job of assessing the needs of the individual and the equipment and making the recommendations to state government vocational rehabilitation for writing the check or helping with the funding. The not so good news is that can take a lot longer than a person wants to wait. I have one case right now that is over a year old. It's had its birthday, and the person can get very frustrated out there. We keep in touch with those folks and try and stay very positive and try and just check along, let them know what progress is being made so that they don't ever lose hope. There was a phrase I picked up in one of my police education classes one time, and it was not today, and it could really apply to many things. But in that one, it had to do with suicide and suicide survivors. They've said that many times a person that's contemplating suicide has thought through the process. They've said this will be the day. They have practiced what they're going to do, or whatever it's going to be, that they've walked through it, and they just haven't done it yet. And I even had one gentleman, bless his heart, he shimmed his feet so that he wouldn't fall over when he did the act. And we also find that one small word, one gentle greeting, picking up the bully's books when the bully knocks them out of their hand, or holding a door and greeting them, just might be the thing to stop that suicide that day. That doesn't mean they won't eventually try it or do it, but our actions can stop it, at least for a day. So not today. I'd like to shift gears just a little bit here and talk about a couple things that out of my background. One of them is NAMI, and I'm sure folks here are aware of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, but they do some great crisis intervention team training. I went to a 40-hour class about 2 years ago, and that was some of the best training I've had in 42 years with a badge and a gun. It changes the way you deal with folks who are having a problem, and it brought out things that you could recognize, much like the list of 6 things that Don was talking about. It's for a first responder, it can be dangerous and exhausting dancing with somebody for 20 to 30 minutes in the street until their father can get there and take control of them and help them. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about somebody having like maybe a heavy bipolar episode in that regard. And, back in the days when I started, It was, there had been a fight and they'd have been arrested and they'd have been in jail, and it wouldn't have helped them one single bit. So I encourage you in your community, see if NAMI is doing crisis intervention team training, and see if you can help push that forward into your first responders that are out there. We must, I agree with Don, we must bust this stigma of mental illness and make ourselves available to others. I tell officers and first responders all the time, because they get involved in things that are ugly, that my couch is always open. They need to know that they can come and unload there. And it's all right not to be all right. Emotions are God-given to us so that we might feel happiness, sadness, and anger and love and those things. But we have to capture our thoughts, because emotions can twist us up and make us believe things that just aren't quite true. Years ago, there's another shift. I created a cute little top 10 list of tips to handle the holidays. This can be a very tough time on a good many folks. Number 5 was to celebrate thoughtfully. And the idea was, we just need to be real mindful, because we can come back from our Christmas vacation, walk into our workplace and say, oh man, it was so good to see my mom this year, not realizing that the person standing right next to you lost mom just before Thanksgiving. So think before you open your mouth and say something so terribly hurtful to somebody that's going through the holidays, or especially the first holidays since they've lost a loved one. One of the cute ones on that list is number 6, is give up your right to be right. When Grandma Gert says Tiger Woods is a NASCAR champion, just laugh, let it go, enjoy the moment. Some folks have to correct everybody, and you don't want to be that person, and that causes all kinds of stress in the holiday. My email is in your chat. If you drop me an email, I'll send you the full top 10 list, and that way you have that. One last story before I stop running my jaws, and you'll see how this connects. I was traveling across our nation this year when I stopped at a fast food joint. I placed my order, I sat down to eat, and I noticed a couple that were probably in their early 60s fighting their way through the door with a son in a power chair. That son was probably 30 something and, invalid in some way. I didn't have enough interaction to know if it was an accident or from birth. I don't know. But I watched casually as I was eating them place their order, get their drinks, fight that chair all the way over to their table. And I also saw the scoff of other patrons who had to get around that chair or had to wait on them to get through the line. And it was kind of bugging me a little bit. A long time ago, I learned to pay attention to those that God puts on your way rather than those he puts in your way. As I was leaving, I gently nudged that power chair and said, "That's one fine set of wheels you have, young man." Brought a big smile to his face. But what happened next is the point. The father placed his hand on mine and said, "Thanks." I can only assume thanks for not scoffing. Thanks for not acting like we're not here. Thanks for speaking to my son. Thanks for bringing a smile to his face, and on and on and on. Many of us at Lyfts have dealt with the throes of disability and caregiving, and we know that those folks are in the trench 24/7, 365. And so to that, I told Carrie I was going to mention this. Kathy Smith, our owner, is just now rolling out the Life Essentials Foundation of Hope. And it is designed to give caregivers a much needed break. When the foundation is financially strong enough and able to, in this case, it would hire a caregiver for this young man, and then it would help fund a getaway for mom and dad who probably haven't celebrated an anniversary in those 30 years because they've been tied down. So mental health is a big issue everywhere. And it certainly is for those that are struggling in agriculture, getting in and out of their equipment. but it is also a very important thing for the caregiver too. They take a lot of heat all the way around trying to get things done. And I'm open for any comments, questions, or anything you have, folks.
Now, Marty, the foundation part, that's not, is it up and running yet, or is it just getting started? Like is there something you can share yet?
He has named it. It is just really getting started. I don't have any information as to how you could participate yet. That was something that was going to be done this year, and it got done. It's nice when you can mark something off your list, but it is started. That's about the best answer I can give you.
Okay. Whenever that does get to the point where we can share, maybe we can put that out on our email list, because I'm sure many states are looking for help for those caregivers, which a lot of times they get forgotten. It's the client. They don't see how much stress is happening on that caregiver who basically has everything on their shoulders.
Yeah.
I really wanted to bring you into our group here because a lot of people may not understand quite the connection of, well, how does getting a piece of equipment affect mental health? And me having that testimony, getting that help, such a relief. Things that I didn't know existed out there because they're hard to find, putting in the right search terms and finding a representative. The extension, I just can't give enough credit to the extension agents. That's basically where I found all my information. And getting help from Lyfts, it literally gives you a piece of your life back, because independence is big for people who have challenges, and just being able to get out there and say, I can do this on my own again, getting that purpose back and everything. It's truly a huge improvement on their mental health. And I really wanted to make sure that everybody in our group understood how much your company helps those. It's not just providing equipment. It's, you're providing other things, independence, consistency, higher spirits.
Well, you're dead right there. I've got a dairy farmer up north that as a teenager wiped out a car and has been paralyzed, and his dad and brothers have been lifting him in and out of equipment for years. Dad is now passed on. The brothers are now in their 40s and 50s. And, he reached out and said, I need to find a way to do this now. He hadn't found the equipment that would help him bridge that gap. And it can make things like the young 35-year-old farmer talked about. Being able to independently get into that piece of equipment is huge for them.
Dawn put a couple thoughts in the chat. So which I believe we've discussed Farm Strong, but here she has that there's a suicide prevention program for farmers, and with terrific evidence base. So she put that link right there in the chat that you guys can click on. And then Donna's our CDC person, and she said compared with the race in the total study population, the suicide rates were significantly higher in 5 major industry groups. So kind of categorizing that down. So she put those 5 in there and then put the link to that information as well. And then, yes, Chad put in all of the agribility projects, which we love agribility as well. Huge part of my life. And then Jennifer, in Georgia, I don't know what the CIT program is, what that stands for. You guys probably do. But Jennifer, if you want to unmute, you can explain that just a little bit, but it looks like a program for law enforcement, which maybe is something that you guys can pass on.
Yeah, it's crisis intervention training. And he mentioned NAMI when and they actually developed it. It started in Tennessee, I believe, and it is a wonderful training. In Georgia, what they've done is the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, which is the kind of the folks that produce all of our sheriff deputies and police officers, where they graduate from their school. they now do the training and coordinate with folks like myself to offer the sessions. It does require a lot for a police unit or a sheriff's office, because it is 40 hours, so it's the whole week. But it, like Marty, like you said, every time I've ever done it, everybody I've ever talked to says it's one of the best things, you know, that they've been through. And a lot of agencies or states have now made it a requirement for their graduation from the police academy. So there's some evidence to show that it's good to get it up front, but then some deputies will say, I'd rather be on the road for a little while and have some experience before I get this, because then it really kind of enhances what they're doing. But it does reduce a lot of folks who have a mental illness being locked up for reasons, you know, that, as Marty, he eloquently said it earlier. So if anybody's interested, I can tell them more about it. It's very good. And then you bring in the community so that when the law enforcement officers are doing this, they already have a contact in the community, so they know who to call if they need to take the person somewhere to get them help. So that's the other benefit of it.
Is that state specific or is it nationwide?
I'm not quite sure. I think it's, you know, a lot of states do it very different. You know, they either offer it through NAMI. I don't know that every state has it, but I can send you some information on it. Crisis intervention training, CIT.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Marty, Cynthia has her email in the chat. I don't want you to miss that. She would like you to send that holiday stress list.
Actually, if I could, it would make life a lot easier on the old man here. I think your second chat is where I listed my email. So likewise, if you type in one address and email me, I can reply and send it to you rather than me typing in these 38 addresses. That would make life so much easier on the guy that looks a little bit like Santa right now.
Yeah, because I was just scrolling down and I was like, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch who want your list. That's exciting. Can you put it in the chat real quick again? Because there are so many chats in there that they'll have to scroll up quite a bit. And anybody else, if you want to unmute, feel free to go ahead and ask your questions too. Yep, and Don just put in there the NTW conference that is going to be in March. And I'll be there again this year teaching QPR. There we go. All right, you guys copy that email and say, hey, Marty, send me your lists. All right. Okay, I appreciate both of my speakers filling in that extra time today. It's only happened twice in a year where someone has had an emergency right before our meeting, and that's just the industry of mental health. Things happen, and we would rather them go take care of that person who's in crisis and come back to us later. So, all right, we will go ahead and end today and look for an email with the YouTube uploading that you can share with the rest of your organization, and then we'll go ahead and have Don and Marty's contact information in that email as well. So everyone have a fantastic December. Happy holidays to you. And it looks like this was our best attended meeting ever. Love it. Bye, everyone.